MAGA Republican cultist Kari Lake suffered the ultimate humiliation in her disastrous debate against Democratic challenger Ruben Gallego, as both of them compete to replace Kyrsten Sinema in the United States Senate. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as you know, it's not just the presidency that's at stake. It's also all of Congress, the House of Representatives, and the United States Senate. And quite frankly, the United States Senate situation is looking by far the most bleak of the three. The presidency is effectively a coin flip. Democrats are slightly favored to take the House. And if you ask me, I mean, even though it's not all disastrous news, Republicans are favored to take the Senate. And I want to be very clear. It's important that we win all three. It's not enough to just win the White House. We have to win all three. Kyrsten Sinema, who used to be a Democrat, she became relatively conservative, and then she left the Democratic Party and became an independent, even though she still caucused with the Democrats. She's no longer seeking re-election. We talked about this maybe even a year ago, or certainly several months ago. So her seat is up for grabs. Ruben Gallego is a former he's a military veteran. He's a Democratic challenger, and he's competing against one of the highest profile MAGA cultists in the country, Kari Lake. They had their debate last night, and even though Kari Lake is very charismatic, she has media training. Gallego obviously does not. Gallego crushed her pretty badly and subjected her to some pretty humiliating moments. So we're going to play some of these clips and unpack them together.
This is why I have more support from elected officials and leaders in this country and in this state than she does. Border mayors that used to campaign with her are now campaigning with me because they don't think that she's serious about this. As a matter of fact, we have 45 Republicans, again, that aren't campaigning with her. And what it seems like, Donald Trump doesn't want to campaign with her anymore either. He's not allowing her pictures on any of his billboards. So this is what we're seeing right now, a candidate that could only talk but doesn't actually produce results.
Well, that's got to sting, because it is true that Kari Lake used to be a darling of Donald Trump. I mean, alongside Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and other, but now there seems to be quite a bit of distance between Trump and Kari Lake, despite the fact that she is perhaps the craziest in terms of her devotion to Trump, certainly on par with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But if you actually look at the polls surrounding Arizona, I suppose it makes sense, because poll after poll after poll after poll after poll shows that Gallego is going to beat her. Obviously, it's not set in stone, but he has been dominating her by high single or even double digits in the polls for months, not to the least of which is he's been out fundraising her as well. Kari Lake, who ran for the Arizona governor's mansion back in 2022, lost badly to then Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, who is now the governor of Arizona. Kari Lake never formally conceded the election. She, like her master Donald Trump, dishonestly claimed that she was the rightful winner of the election, that she was the true governor of Arizona. And that actually will come up in some of the clips I'm about to show you. But I'm telling you, in many ways, she is the most MAGA of the MAGA politicians out there, perhaps alongside Mark Robinson, lieutenant governor of my state, running for governor of my state, North Carolina. And yet it is kind of strange that Donald Trump has so much distance between the two of them, perhaps because he thinks that there's no way she could possibly win. So that was one of the many humiliating moments that Gallego subjected her to. But here are a couple of others.
So this is why we focus on things such as the border security bill, right? Something that was extremely important. It was a compromise between the most conservative Republicans and Democrats to make sure that we brought some effort. This is something that the Border Patrol wanted and endorsed. It would have brought thousands of Border Patrol agents, thousands of asylum judges, thousands of ICE agents, as well as the technology that we needed at our ports of entries. And this is stuff that I heard from our Border Patrol union. I heard from the mayors that I've visited down there, our county officials, and they needed this and they wanted this. This is why it was very, very sad that Kari Lake came out and was against that bill, even after it was carved off between the foreign policy aid and just solely standing. She was still against it, not because there was a better option, but because she needs it. She needs this to be a border problem, because that solution would have brought a lot of the problems that we have under control. And look, from day one, I've worked in a bipartisan manner when it comes to this. One of the first things that I did when I got to Congress, I worked with Congresswoman Martha McSally, a Republican from Southern Arizona, to get veterans to join Border Patrol. Even recently, I signed on to a bill, the only Democrat signed to a bill Representative Crenshaw of Texas to get more federal law enforcement, make it easier for them to actually join Border Patrol, something that has been very difficult and something that the Border Patrol agents themselves told me they wanted to be able to.
So again, he's hitting her hard on the fact that she opposed the bipartisan border bill, which is relatively conservative, again, like her master, Donald Trump, because she'd much rather campaign on a wedge issue than solve problems. She hates this country. She hates even her Republican constituents. And to the extent that there is a crisis, a true crisis at the southern border, she's happy to make it worse as long as it benefits her electorally in the short term, which so far it hasn't. As again, she is losing in the polls and the fundraising decisively. Nothing is set in stone, but it would be a true upset if Kari Lake won the Arizona Senate seat. And thank God, because if she did win, again, the margin for error in the United States Senate is extremely slim. Republicans need only flip 2 seats, and they basically already got one in the form of West Virginia. So it's down to 1. We have to defend every seat or pick up a seat in order to keep a 50-50 majority. That's how tight this is, friends. So another clip in which Gallego humiliates Kari Lake.
But she's still in denial about the 2022 election. And now I give you 1 minute. You have 1 minute. Will you finally tell the people of Arizona, did you win or lose that election?
Can I talk about water really quickly?
So again, Gallego there pulling a Tim Walz, just like Governor Walz did in his debate with J.D. Vance, not about the 2020 election, although I should say that Kari Lake also believes that the 2020 election was stolen and that President Biden is not the legitimate president and that Donald Trump won the election. But Kari Lake also has her own miniature big lie in the form of the Arizona gubernatorial race, where she has not formally publicly conceded. She made a number of ridiculous legal challenges to the 2022 election that have been laughed out of court and decided against her. She has not formally publicly conceded. So much like the Walz J.D. Vance moment, this was Gallego's opportunity to hit her on this, and she pivoted and tried to change the subject because she won't concede that she's lost elections. Pretty embarrassing stuff. Another clip.
This is a person who only 2 years ago, actually less than 2 years ago, said the 1864 territorial law, a law that said if you were an abortion provider, it was a mandatory 2-year sentence, and it had no exceptions for rape or incest, was a great law. She said it was a great law. She said she was thrilled when Roe was overturned. And then when she was disappointed to find out that the 1864 law, again, the one that had no exceptions for rape or incest, was not going to get enforced, she said, well, I hope the sheriffs will do their jobs. Can you imagine? It's not true. We have it on tape. These are all your words on tape.
So again, if you recall, several months ago, the very conservative Arizona Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, blew the dust off a Civil War era law, which is perhaps the most draconian in the country. There was widespread backlash, such that even though Kari Lake had been on the record, and we'll play the clip, we'll play the tape that Ruben Gallego references, because even though she says it's a lie, it's not a lie. He does have the tape. He did bring the receipts. Kari Lake and MAGA Republicans had previously endorsed the law, but then once the Arizona State Supreme Court complied and basically gave them their wish, once again, Republicans were the dog that caught the car. What are you going to do with it? Then they realized it was an electoral dead end. So then Kari Lake did everything in her power to distance herself from her previous comments about that law. Unfortunately, the internet remembers.
We can have that law, but it is not going to be enforced with the people we have in office. You understand that, right? You heard that Chris Mays, the AG, is not going to enforce anything. So we really don't have that law. And I think there's a lot of people who want to say, oh, that law is on the books and we have that law. No, we don't have that law. She's not enforcing the law. So we don't have that law. The only people who can enforce that law are our sheriffs. And we need to start asking the sheriffs if they're willing to enforce that. I don't think they are.
So there you go. She wanted the local sheriffs to defy Chris Mays, the Attorney General of Arizona, who said that she would not enforce such a draconian law. And so again, Ruben Gallego was correct. So it's just that not Kirsten Sinema, but Kari Lake wanted to back away from that wildly unpopular law as the election drew near, and she's still trying to employ revisionist history. Another clip.
By contrast, we're going to see and talk to somebody who has really failed the basic test of honesty. She has lied to Arizonans about the 2022 election. She has said that she still is the rightful governor of Arizona. She has lied about fellow Republicans to the point where they had to go get bodyguards because of all the threats that she created. We are at a crossroads, Arizona. We need to make sure that we ensure our water rights, we continue this great growth in infrastructure, and that we actually protect abortion rights.
Yeah, so Kari Lake is such a toxic MAGA Republican that, like the most toxic MAGA Republicans, with her election denialism and her Second Amendment enthusiasm and her violent incendiary rhetoric, she has created a situation where Republicans who wanted Trump to win but recognized he didn't and did their jobs to certify the results of the 2020 election and the 2022 election, that they have been under threat from MAGA Republican voters and supporters, in large part because of her contributions to that. That's how toxic she is, and perhaps one of many reasons why so many Republicans are actually either not supporting her or are explicitly backing Ruben Gallego, a Democrat. Last clip I want to play is a devastating ad that Gallego's campaign launched around the time of the debate.
I believe that what happened on January 6th was a peaceful protest.
Our election, our victory was stolen from us.
And these bastards back there don't want us talking about stolen elections.
Taking the life of an unborn child is murder.
John McCain may be dead, but he is reaching up from the grave trying to keep power in Arizona.
We drove a stake through the heart of the McCain machine.
So, of course, she's referring to the late Senator John McCain, a wildly popular Republican statesman and a senator from Arizona. Again, one thing that jumped into mind is after insulting John McCain, even after his death, much like Donald Trump regularly does, once she realized she was losing Arizona, she tried to moderate, again, cynically, not a change of heart, just a purely cynical maneuver to gain ground that she was rapidly losing. And so she reached out to Meghan McCain, the conservative Republican daughter of the late Senator John McCain, who publicly rebuked her on Twitter, popped off like you would not believe. Totally justified, by the way. And I should say that Meghan McCain, I have serious issues with her. She is still a conservative. She is a Republican. She does the both sides nonsense, even though she's not a big fan of Donald Trump. So not a particularly good person, but certainly better than Kari Lake. And so that attempt by Kari Lake to engage in revisionist history and to cynically moderate for electoral advantage was shut down brutally. So yeah, that was a brutal debate for Kari Lake, who, again, let's be very clear, she's crazy, but Kari Lake is actually smarter than somebody like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she was a TV anchor in Arizona for the longest time. She is attractive. She's smart. She's got media savvy. Like, if you see her, she's very quick on her feet. She reminds me of Kellyanne Conway in a lot of ways. She's an effortless liar. She is confident in any situation she's in. She knows how to play an audience. And Ruben Gallego, by contrast, doesn't have that level of media training or media savvy. So if you watch the full debate, he's clearly more nervous than she is, but he has the facts, he has the record, he has the endorsements, he has the polling and the fundraising, and he was able to deploy Kari Lake's own words and her own rhetoric and her own record against her, as well as his as a juxtaposition, and he dominated that debate pretty solidly. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.